Hello. Please let me see your ticket stubs for the double-edged double bill, where you get two film and/or media discussions for the price of one, which is, nothing. Each week, Adam Thomas and Thomas Mariani will come to the table to randomly select the yin and yang of a double feature. One will have two good movies, the other two bad. Both will have to pick a number between 1 and 10 in order to seal their fates for each episode. Do you feel lucky? Do ya, punk? I am Adam Dirty Feet, whatever you want to call it, Thomas.
And I am Thomas Mariani, and I ain't happy, I'm feeling glad, because I got sunshine in a bag.
Oh, yeah, well, that's good for you.
In case you couldn't tell by our clever little intros there, the topic for this week's edition of Double Edged Double Bill is the works of actor, director, and guy who talks to an empty chair, Clint Eastwood.
Dude, the consummate tough guy. Like, is there anyone tougher in Hollywood?
That audience that was watching him talk to a chair. That was a pretty tough audience.
That's a pretty tough audience, that's true.
Yeah, anyway. But no, I mean, I agree. I do really enjoy Clint Eastwood, especially just as, like, he's very much a distinctive presence, and to his credit, keeps on working. Well into his 80s now, almost 90, I think, at this point, and he made 2 movies this year.
Yeah, he's showing no signs of slowing down. He literally just wants that Lifetime Achievement Oscar.
Oh, so
like I think that's what he's getting for. I mean, if we're talking just directorial movies, they're pretty much. What would you say? 75-25? 75 good?
75 that record's a bit more spotty as of recent, especially.
Well, I mean, Gran Torino was great, but you had that really bad one.
Specify.
I don't even remember that. The 10 whatever to Paris.
Oh, 15-17 to Paris. That was the other one this year. And we should mention we're doing this because The Mule is coming out the week that we're releasing this. His movie where he's running drugs for a Mexican drug cartel.
I have zero hopes for it, but I'm very interested.
Yeah, I mean, if nothing else, it's like, oh man, he pulled in every favor he possibly could for this cast.
It's a huge cast.
Yep. Hey, Bradley, I got you that Oscar nomination. Get out of directing A Star is Born and come here.
Wait, he got Bradley Cooper for what movie?
American Sniper.
Oh my god, I forgot that was a Clint movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are you talking about? Best baby in cinema history, Adam.
Oh my god, that is the worst.
How can you beat Bradley Cooper making a baby's arm move with its thumb clearly on the screen?
Obviously.
That scene is so worth watching for any acting class. It's just like, here is a performer in desperation.
Yeah. Here's what you don't want to do.
Well, no, it's not that. It's like just so much credit to Bradley Cooper. Like, he is so trying in that terrible scene to make this feel somewhat real, but he can't. And it's a symptom of, admittingly, to get back to Clint Eastwood, of his very infamous lack of wanting to do more than one take for any scene.
Yeah, right. In fact, I was listening to Mark Maron's podcast a lot. He's had several actors on there who have been in Clint movies. And they always bring that up, like, no, Clint just does one take. And they're like, even if I didn't think I had it, Clint's like, no, we're moving. I'm like, oh, okay, fuck, let's just keep the ball rolling.
Which speaks to his efficiency, if not necessarily his overall craft, as of especially recent. You can tell, it's like, man, you really could have done a second take. Come on, man.
Right.
But we need to get to the nature of this intro, which is the picking of our good and our bad feature, which, if you're new... each week, Adam and I come to the table with 2 movies, and we switch off on the quality, because one will have 2 good movies and the other one 2 bad ones, as we mentioned in our intro, and both of us assign numbers to those 2 movies, and the other one has to pick a number between 1 and 10, and whichever number we pick that gets closest to the other choice, that ends up being both a good and a bad movie. Adam's got the 2 good movies this time. I got the 2 bad ones. But, Adam, I need to pick a number between 1 and 10 for your 2 good Clint Eastwood movies. And keep in mind also, we open this up to movies he either just starred in or also had some sort of behind-the-scenes directorial or written quality.
Right.
Too. Right. Because he directs and stars in The Mule, so of course it's open for everybody. But, for me, I'm going to pick number 6.
Okay, at number 8, I have, which I honestly do feel is the best directed movie by Clint Eastwood, Perfect World.
I've not seen this one.
Oh, dude. Starring Kevin Costner and Clint Eastwood. Oh, my God, it's such a good movie.
All right.
Oh, I'm so glad you haven't seen it. I'm so glad you haven't seen it.
I've heard this. I've never actually seen it, so I'm very curious about that one. And what was your other choice?
Number 2, I had In the Line of Fire with Clint Eastwood and John Malkovich. That's pretty good, because of John Malkovich, especially.
Oh, my God. Of course, you can't go too wrong.
That's probably one of his best performances. But
speaking of wrong, Adam.
Yeah, fuck me. I'm going to go number 3.
All right. At number 2, I had Clint, along with probably his best on-screen...
Goddamn monkey, I swear to God.
You know, Adam, you can't go any which way but loose.
You motherfucker. I knew it. I fucking knew it.
Which, for those of you who don't know, this is a movie where Clint Eastwood was palled around with an orangutan. The first one of 2.
Yeah. And what was your second pick?
My second pick was, I think, one you probably would have had more issue with, to be fair, which was the infamously awful musical Paint Your Wagon.
Oh, thank God. Okay. Yeah. All right. I'm good with it. He shares beers with an orangutan. I mean, that's great.
I mean, that's true, as opposed to, Paint Your Wagon, which all you really need to see of Paint Your Wagon, folks, is the Simpsons parody. It says everything that needs to be said.
That was so good. Paint the wagon red with blood.
Oh, look, there's Lee Marvin. He's always crazy and drunk. But yeah, that'll be a curious double feature. And we'll get into all that punks right after this.
He just broke out.
Are you gonna shoot me?
Me and you are friends.
He just found out.
You got no problem if I handle this?
Now the rest of Texas better watch out.
We got an armed killer and an innocent boy out there.
You're not bad, are you, Booch?
Oh, yeah.
A Perfect World, directed by Clint Eastwood. Look for it on video cassette.
And we are back, and we've brought along a guest. He is a guest you've heard before. He's the first 3-time guest on the show. He's basically our Alec Baldwin for our SNL. It is Mr. Sam Brutuxan. Sam, how are you doing?
Where's Steve Martin?
You beat Steve Martin. I guess Tori DePina's our Steve Martin.
Because he's been on it twice, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But Adam and I really wanted you back on, Sam, because we love having you here.
Well, hold on. Wait.
I wanted to have you on. Adam fought it tooth and nail at every second.
Adam was like, well, there's a movie featuring orangutan. I guess we can have him on.
Right.
Exactly.
I guess.
I at least wanted to invite you back on, and I told you, oh yeah, we're doing a Clint Eastwood episode, and you immediately came on like, holy fuck, really? Why Clint Eastwood, Sam?
Well, it's the simple fact I mostly resonated with his performances in Man with No Name trilogy, mostly with The Good, Bad, and the Ugly. That really resonated with me when I was younger, especially with me and my dad. It was kind of like a bonding experience watching those movies. I watched Dirty Harry like a while ago, and then I'm more surprisingly decently well acquainted with some of his recent stuff.
Very interested to hear your opinions then on the 2 movies we have here. Let's get to our first feature, which is A Perfect World, which came out in 1993, and does feature Clint Eastwood in it, though interestingly enough, he is second billed to Kevin Costner. And I found this out. This is the first time in several decades where he was second billed. Last time was 2 Mules for Sister Sarah. And deserved, because he's not in this movie as much, and it is very much Costner's show, obviously.
Yeah, but I also picked this because he directs it as well.
Right, obviously. And obviously, as you mentioned, Adam, this was your pick, so why this movie in particular?
Alright. Now, it has been quite a long time since I've seen this movie. I saw it probably for the last time in the 90s, if not the mid to the late 90s. I don't think I saw it when it first came out. I mean, I might have, but I was only 10. And it's just always resonated with me. Like, I always felt bad for the little boy in it, and I always remember Costner being so awesome in it. And I watched it again. I mean, I still like it. It's dated. But I just, for some reason, it always stuck in there with me, especially Kevin Costner. He reminds me almost like William Hurt in a lot of his roles, where he's just so like dry and understated. But sometimes it really works and pops, and sometimes it definitely does not.
And then you have Waterworld, and then nothing works.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's just, and this is the first movie other than the spaghetti westerns that I want to say that I saw Clint Eastwood in. I'm sure I saw Dirty Harry when I was a kid too, but I don't remember it. And then of course I've watched them all since, but I think this was my first post-Western Eastwood movie that I saw.
Well, it's interesting because this is definitely the first time I'd seen it, and I have a lot of thoughts on it, but Sam, had you seen this prior?
No, actually, I was shocked that I never even heard of this. Honestly, this is like around the time when you got stuff like Forrest Gump. Like, I enjoy Forrest Gump, but it had a very similar, like, early 90s Oscar baity type feel to it, especially going toward the third act that felt weirdly artificial to me personally. I will say it is commonly made. There are some sequences in there that are very interesting and very surprisingly, like, comedic the way they're put together, especially the part where the truck detaches from the trailer. That was very shockingly kind of comedic for a movie that was about some convict who kidnaps a kid.
Well, I mean, I can agree to some extent with that. I think it has something to do with less Eastwood's direction and more the screenwriter is John Lee Hancock, who would later go on to direct and write a lot of movies that I do agree are very schmaltzy in this way, like The Blind Side or Saving Mr. Banks.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? But, I think maybe that perspective also kind of affected me with this one, because this is the first time I'd seen it, and I really dug A Perfect World, in all honesty. I think what works about this is the fact that, because we haven't mentioned much about the basic plot, is it takes place in, like, the early 60s. They mentioned President Kennedy's coming to Texas, so spoilers for that future event.
Not to blow your mind.
Indeed. But in Texas, Kevin Costner plays a guy who, along with his buddy, escapes out of prison, who I found out that buddy, his name is Keith. I'm sorry, I can't pronounce your last name. I don't know how the hell to pronounce it. It's like it's like a bunch of consonants. That guy would later become a voice actor, and also he would fill out to be the guy in The Dark Knight, who the Joker takes hostage in the police station.
Whoa, really? Oh my god, it is.
I know, right? I thought he looked familiar, and then I looked it up like, oh shit. But anyway, the two of them escape prison in the 60s in Texas, and they end up running into a suburban neighborhood, and they come across this Jehovah's Witness family, and they take the young boy hostage, and from there Kevin Costner eventually ditches that one guy, in a very literal way, and goes cross-country essentially to try and get to the border of Texas, while at the same time Clint Eastwood plays Texas Marshal, who is chasing after him. And there's some things that could seem conventional, but I think what really works is, I'm not a big Kevin Costner fan in general. I find him to be kind of bland and familiar in a lot of roles that I've seen him in. But I'm mostly familiar with like his heyday movies, where it's just like Waterworld, like Sam mentioned, or Dances with Wolves, just like, he's very typical, I'm a white male protagonist type. And what I like about A Perfect World is, I think it's an extremely complex role for Costner to play, because while you're kind of rooting on his side at the same time, you also do realize this dude is too far gone.
He's crazy, dude.
He's a fucked up person. And I think the movie does a great job of balancing his character the whole time. Because you can tell while he does care about this kid, at the same time, he's totally manipulating him the whole time. And I love that performance so much. I think it elevates material that, admittingly, on an outline perspective, is very familiar, kind of rote. I have, most of my problems are script-wise, particularly, I mentioned this to Sam, it's weird that the last episode you were on, our Dinosaurs episode, you talked about a 1993 movie with Laura Dern in it, and we're also doing that now.
Which had shots that look like man, where are the brachiosaurs at? When are they going to come here? Because there's a shot that's like near a lake and is positioned similar enough to that one shot with the brachiosaur, and then Laura Dern and Sam Neill looking up and saying, "Oh, it's beautiful." Like, I was waiting for that to happen.
I mean, yeah, you could just do that with the Texas fields. My God, they do move, it hurts. I wish they stuck the landing with Laura Dern, because I think she's a very interesting character too, and her playoff of Clint Eastwood as a Texas Marshal is interesting, but by the end of it, it's just like, oh wait, she taught Clint Eastwood to be a better person, and she's just off to the sidelines, kind of. Like, stuff like that shows the weaknesses of the script, but the relationship between Costner and the kid, I think, carries it so well in a way that, like I said, it's not just... In a lesser movie, they would make it like, oh, he's the criminal with a heart of gold, but it's like, he's a criminal with a heart of gold, but also, he's an incredibly disturbed, fucked up person on every level.
Right, he's a criminal with a heart of gold because he got abused as a child and everything, so he sees another child that's, kind of mixed up, and that's the only reason. He was going to kill the one guy right in front of his wife and grandson. I mean, there was no question about it. He would have done it, I think. To kind of piggyback on what you're saying about Laura Dern and how she was kind of underutilized, nobody's as underutilized as Bradley Whitford in this movie. Like, why is it him?
I don't know if I quite agree, because obviously Bradley Whitford, for those of you who don't know, you would recognize from like Cabin in the Woods, West Wing, great character actor. What I liked about this was most of his roles tend to be like very talky, very dialogue driven, and I liked seeing a supporting role from him that was more non-verbally driven. I think that's a very interesting, different perspective to see from him.
Well, let's put it this way. I'm okay with that part of it, but the part that they actually do give him any kind of substantial dialogue is when he's basically cornering and trying to press himself onto Laura Dern. And you're like, this, why did he need that character trait? I don't know that was necessary.
I don't think that's necessarily a fault, because she's a woman in the 60s who's part of this, like, big masculine-driven journey to try and find Kevin Costner. I'm not surprised that would happen, and from the sort of silent type from the CIA, I wouldn't be surprised by that at all. I actually liked what they did with that. I thought that really worked for Laura Dern's character. I just wish, like I said, that they stuck the landing with her.
How do you both feel about that one scene where he just, well, spoilers for his Perfect World, but where he just flat out just kills Kevin Costner right there? Because I feel like, personally for me, that was a bit overdone for a scene like that. Just because I think if he would have just passed away just naturally, I think that would have been fine. I think obviously he's there to solidify him as more of the antagonist or the villain of the movie, and he's already like a really bad person. But I feel like just having him just say, oh, "Fuck it, let's just shoot him straight in the heart," like that might have been a bit much personally for me. But I don't know about how you both feel.
I didn't necessarily have a problem with it. It is a little cliche, but my problem with it is it was so, like, telegraphed. You knew it was going to happen.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, there was no question that as soon as, like, oh, I got something for you, he's like, oh, he's going to shoot him. I don't know. I do think, though, I agree with you, Sam. If he would have just passed away and been laying there in the field with the money and the Casper mask and whatnot, just dying of the wound from the boy, I think it would have made it more of an impact.
Specifically, like, he gets a perfect shot at his chest, at his heart, and I'm like, oh, I get it. He has a broken heart now. Firstly, for me, that felt like a bit of symbolism that might have creeped up a bit toward me and just kind of made me feel like, it's a bit too thick. The guy's already dying. Just having him just be shot again, is specifically just straight in the chest perfectly, like, I think that was a bit too much for me, But anyway, I'm talking too much about that because I will agree with you guys about Kevin Costner, because Kevin Costner pins every scene he's in, and he keeps that scene up in a way where everything around him actually works because of his own, like, aura, which is shocking to say considering I never would have thought that. Like, Mr. McFarlane USA just keeps up the movie.
You're the only person that remembers McFarlane USA.
Yeah, I think so.
I did, because when I was working in a movie theater, like, that's all I kept seeing every time I cleaned the theaters.
That's its legacy, everybody.
Back to it, but he really does carry it. And the other thing that really shocked me is a revelation, but he reminded me of a manager I had at my current job. He doesn't work there anymore, but, like, his mannerisms, the way he talks, his mild ways of showcasing, like, his psychotic behavior, I was just like, man, I knew someone like this. That's honestly more of a compliment toward the way he played his character, because it did feel very believable. Like, he would be very complimentary, but, like, if you did something or whatever, like, he'd be like, whatever, I don't care. Like, as long as it services him, and as long as you're underneath his guys, his his eyesight, then you're fine. There's one point where you just said, like, you could, like, to the kids, it's like, well, why didn't you just leave then? You could have just stayed there. Like, that's how much he doesn't care unless he's on his side.
He was brainwashing that kid. I mean, he knew the kid was going to come with him, but he just would throw that back in his face, like, see, you wanted to be with me. That's what I think, anyways. I don't think that, I mean, yeah, the kid, of course, had a choice, but I think Kevin Costner knew that the kid was always going to choose him. Like, there was no question.
That's true, but it still shows a very, like, monstrous behavior on his part, regardless.
Oh, yeah, no, he's a piece of shit.
Well, no, I agree with that, but at the same time, I do believe that as the movie goes along, he did genuinely start to care for that kid at the same time. But he's still a monstrous, manipulative dude. That's what I really dug about this whole movie, is you could easily go either way too far. You could lean into, like, he's an awful piece of shit, or he's like, oh, he's a real, down-to-earth, has a heart criminal that nobody understands. But the movie plays it on such an even keel that I found that so compelling. I think that's what really drives the movie, because if it dipped into either way, I think it would have been a far lesser movie, but I think it's really on the strength of Costner. The key example of that is when the kid ends up stealing the Casper outfit, and he says, like, stealing is wrong, but if you need to get something and you're really desperate, it's fine to take a loaner out. That's a great example of how he's brainwashing that kid, but he's still at least got some interest in this kid's weird fascination with, like, oh, I want to do trick-or-treat, I want to do Halloween. It draws such a great balancing act that I'm surprised the movie ended up managing to accomplish, considering all the hindrances that it does have on the page.
Well, and even the adults that are in the movie that interact with the kid prove his point, to where it's like every parent that the kid runs into are either, like, surprisingly abusive or very, like, mean. The lady working at that store, the Friendlies, she wound up just saying, listen here, you little shit, you leave that costume here, otherwise you're a thief. And then I'm like, holy fuck, this is a kid you're talking to. Like, calm down. You could have easily have just said, could you please return the costume back? She would have given him, like, a life lesson. But, like, no, she was just like, fuck you, little piece of shit, give me back that Casper costume.
Employee of the year there, because I'd have been like, oh shit, that's the kid who's with the murderer, let him go, take whatever you want. Why are you going to try to stop him? He's driving around, hitting cop cars right outside.
No, that Casper costume's the important thing that she needs to save, Adam. But what I love about that also, I was thinking about this, just like, wow, Clint Eastwood, Casper, oh my god, that's why he's in the Casper movie.
Oh my god, he is in the Casper movie.
Right, he's clearly a fan of Casper.
Yeah, he must be. Wow, I never even thought of that. Well, that would be in his, like, childhood when it first came out.
Right, yeah, because he grew up in, like, the 1910s or whatever, when Casper was, like, new and innovative. That's the thing, it's just like, oh my god, this solved the 20-year mystery of why the fuck is he in that movie, in that weird cameo scene where Rodney Dangerfield and the Crypt Keeper also show up.
Yeah, Rodney Dangerfield I get, because it was Rodney Dangerfield to take anything. Crypt Keeper's out of attractive, but then you see, like, Academy Award-winning Clint Eastwood. I'm like, wait a minute, what?
Oh, and also Mel Gibson, but we won't go into that. Anyway.
Explains why, like, most of his recent movies look like they were shot inside Casper. Because everything looks really gray and shit. I
mean, his inspiration clearly for filmmaking was that one Casper cartoon where he had the pet fox and it died, and he was super sad about it. Little baby Clint Eastwood was like, I'm gonna make all my movies like that. Super fucking depressing.
Yeah, he does like to do that. I do want to talk about the little boy a little bit, because he didn't do much as a child actor, and I don't know that he's exceptional here, but he does come across as super, like, innocent.
Yeah, it's T.J. Lothar is the child actor as Phil Buzz. He's one of those child actors who kind of did this and didn't do anything really afterward. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, because I think he's perfectly cast for this part, which is to say, he's a Jehovah's Witness kid, he feels very sheltered, and that works authentically as a way of bouncing off of Costner.
He's very stable throughout the entire movie. It's obvious there are certain points where it's just like he couldn't deliver a line the way that, like, Clint Eastwood wanted him to deliver it. He served his purpose well, and well enough, and, like, you can tell with certain movies where like man, that kid is, like, acting his or her ass off.
But I thought they did a good job, like, in the scenes where Costner would, like, you know, give him pep talks, as uncomfortable as it was, or the other one tells him, Or the other where he's like, you're the new navigator, Bob. I'd rather have you as my, you know, side man than him any day. And the kid would just crack that huge smile that would just engulf his whole face. Because this kid, you could tell, like, was probably bullied. had no friends. Like, he saw in the beginning of the movie someone from school at his house, and then later that night that same kid is water ballooning his house. Like, this kid probably gets picked on and teased all the time. So I thought that was kind of cool. But again, Costner's character probably realized that too, and was part of his brainwashing, which makes him even more diabolical. But yeah, the one scene.
Well, for those who might not remember this, in the movie, there's a point where while Kevin Costner's getting stuff at a gas station, his evil rival is just like, "Hey, let me see your pecker, boy." And he looks down and it's just like, "Oh, it's puny." And you're like, immediately, "Ooh, that guy's awful. He should die." He does. They try and reprise that thing where Kevin Costner is told by the kid, he's just like, "Oh, your friend said my thing was puny." Well, he's trying to, like, basically change into his Casper costume. And Kevin Costner's like, "Let me see it." I'm like, wait, why are we doing this now?
Yeah.
What? Kevin, stop. Kevin, no.
I agree. Like, no, it's a good size for a boy your age. I'm like, oh, why? Well, first of all, this kid's not smart enough to be like, why do you know that?
Yeah, the kid wouldn't even know. And, like, that scene is just, like, is basically, like, a certain product placement away from, like, here's our sponsorship for Magnum condoms, so that way we can show off how big this kid's dick is.
Trojan condoms, start him young. Anyway, like, I get the intent, it's just still really fucking weird. And I don't know why, even in 1993, it was in a movie.
I get he's not good, but still, like, that was just awkward.
Clearly, he had no other intention but to, like, give the kid a self-confidence boost. But still, why does an 8-year-old know if he's got a big or small penis? Like, seriously.
And why would he even care? Like, at that point, a kid is not thinking about certain things like that.
I want to steer directly away from this conversation that we're currently having. I do want to talk a bit more about some of the side characters we have. We kind of mentioned, like, Clint Eastwood and that caravan that's following him around. And while I do, as I mentioned, have some issues with that just on a script level, and also, I'm sorry, Clint, you're not a Texan. You can't convincingly portray that.
Always put him as that in movies where he's got the cowboy hat and everything. It never works.
Like, he's a total California kid.
Yeah.
He is not a Texas Ranger.
He's not. I'm sorry, Clint Eastwood, but you cannot be the Pee-wee. You cannot still evoke that character you've had for, like, years now and still pretend like, no, this is who I really am. Like, no, you're not.
You're not even a Cowboy Curtis, sir.
See, yeah. I don't agree with that. I think Clint Eastwood is still living off those laurels in his movies. Like in Gran Torino, he's old, but he's still like the grizzled tough guy.
I would say in Gran Torino, it's more of like playing off Dirty Harry versus Man with No Name. This is definitely trying to play more off Man with No Name. But what I find interesting, and I actually, I have a piece I'm writing on my blog that I'll mention later. This sort of feels, along with Unforgiven was the movie before this, and Bridges of Madison County was the movie that he followed this up with. All three of those movies are honestly Clint kind of coming to terms with the Man with No Name as a character. Obviously Unforgiven for certain reasons, but with A Perfect World, it kind of feels like Clint as this Texas Ranger is more of the lawful good trying to stop Kevin Costner. He's like Man with No Name, but if he did actually have a name and an identity and all the fucked up trappings that would happen if you were the Man with No Name. Because obviously, right, like, Man with No Name from the Dollars trilogy is very much a allegorical character, someone who's like myth and spread around, which works great for those three movies. But with these three that he did in the 90s, I would argue it's Clint coming to terms with that character and what it would sort of mean from that, you know, at that point, like a 30-year perspective. It feels like him nostalgically looking back at that character and showing off what kind of makes that character badass, but also the consequences of that badassery. In this case, like, Kevin Costner does some badass things in the movie, but also you see the consequences of it at every single turn. I think it's also there in Unforgiven, and to a certain extent in Bridges of Madison County, more from like a nomadic perspective he's going on as this like photographer that travels from place to place, and in that movie picks up women. I will go all about it in that article. But
I don't disagree with you. I also think, especially with the three movies mentioned, that it was almost Clint Eastwood coming to terms with that he's an older man now. He's not the tough action star anymore. He's the older, more subdued, stoic presence. I mean, works for him, obviously. I mean, he's Clint fucking Eastwood. Yeah, and plus, dude, I mean, for him to be able to take almost backseat in this movie willingly says a lot about him, too. I mean, because, like you said before, since Two Mules for Sister Sarah, which was, almost 25 years prior to this, he's always been the top star.
Yeah, that's true, but I also would say that you can see his ideals being portrayed in the movie as well, in a certain way. You can definitely feel his presence in the director's booth, just the way certain scenes are implemented and the messages behind what he's trying to say, especially with him and Laura Dern. They're there, but of course he's not, because he doesn't have as big of a role as he does with other movies. He kind of just doesn't have that big of an impact.
In terms of like his general presence in the movie, I definitely agree with you, but even in terms of the ideals, what I like is that it feels that Laura Dern is challenging a lot of the ideals that sort of a Man with No Name or Clint's traditional Western persona would embody as this, older Texas Ranger he talks about. Just like, oh, I know everything, lady, sit down, calm down. And she's like, no, you asshole, you can't just go into this half-cocked. You gotta, like, understand who this person is and what he would do as somebody who's holding somebody hostage before you can go do whatever the fuck all. And that's what makes him embrace that idea by the end of the movie, where he just realizes, oh, you know what, I shouldn't be a dick. Thanks, Laura Dern. Now stay off to the side while I not be a dick and try and be a decent person.
Right, and I think that was one of my main problems with the Bradley Whitford scene, is that was, Clint's way of peppering himself in as the intimidating tough guy. It was like, this is my show, kid. You're in my office, blah, blah, blah. I know what you're here for. This isn't it. Like, okay. Stop it. You've been doing nothing but give this lady shit this whole movie. And
Laura Dern gives him shit in return the whole time.
No, I'm not saying she doesn't, but I'm saying, I'm not talking about her. I'm talking about Bradley Whitford's character, where all of a sudden, he comes and stands up for her. Let's put it this way. That was unnecessary to me, because I thought it should have been her doing it. I don't know that she needed Clint's character to come in and save the day.
I'll definitely agree with that angle of it. At the same time, she still also puts up a fight whenever Bradley Whitford does come on to her. She's like, fuck off, you idiot. This is a job.
She knees him in the balls, too, I mean.
Yeah, exactly. Just get the fuck away from me. I'm doing a goddamn job.
That is the biggest plus and the biggest, minus for me of this movie. It's just, I wish there was more of an arc with her in the movie, because, she kind of just... It's she has, the two scenes... the two big ones I can remember is the one with Bradley Whitford, and then, of course, her introduction, and then her doing her whole spiel about where Kevin Costner is going and what his whole deal's about. And then at the end with the campfire, and then that whole thing. And then, I just kind of wish there was more meat in that part, just because, she's so good in here. Like you said, she deconstructs, Clint Eastwood's, her whole, is basically kind of his initial career, basically. And it's great to watch, but man, I just think, man, I wish we'd seen more of her in the movie in favor of the other shmups who kind of just are in the background and see a few things but don't really do as much.
I just wish they stuck the landing more. I think they had the perfect setup to tee that off, and they didn't quite land it because they want to have it be more of a Clint faces off against Costner. I think you could have used that, obviously, but at the same time, putting Laura Dern out to the side isn't the way to do it either. They still sink a lot of the big emotional points that needed to happen anyway. Even with that scene, the trappings around the finale can often be kind of contrived, but I almost don't really give a shit because of how good Costner and the kid really do play off of each other. Because on a sort of outline level, it goes on for a while. It's like, oh, hey, look, we're gonna have, obviously, everybody surround Costner and the kid. The kid's gonna go up to the cops, but he's gotta go back to Costner, and they gotta go back up, and then Bradley Whitford has to shoot him. It's drawn out a bit. Shocker, a Clint Eastwood movie that's a bit too long. Never happens. I'm still emotionally invested that whole time. Not so much oh, man, Kevin Costner and this kid, this great relationship, it's gone. It's these two have a really strong connection that I do believe on both sides there's love there, but also, that kid's so fucked. This is going to scar him for life.
Yeah, no, right. I'm assuming you were more like me. You're more emotionally invested on the sake of the child.
Yes.
We're dude, this kid doesn't understand anything that just happened to him, but it is going to come back with a vengeance. This kid's going to need therapy. I don't know if Jehovah's Witness believe in therapy or not, but this fucking kid needs it.
I almost want the follow-up movie, that's 25 years later, about this kid now, and how he's just in sick therapy. Clint Eastwood would just glob all over that. Oh, it's so depressing.
It's like American Psycho.
Kind of, you know what? Maybe that works a bit. But even timeline-wise, because it would be the 80s probably when he's that old.
Probably wear a tracksuit with that Casper mask. If he found that Casper mask in the evidence locker, and then years later it would have cut to him, like he would have been like a new like slasher for the modern age.
You're right. I want to talk about one thing before we get into the final thoughts here. You guys brought up the scene with the camper where it detached. And it was like, it was intentionally funny, but it just felt kind of out of place. The climax with the megaphone, where as soon as Clint picks it up, it's like, what? And he's like, God damn it, this thing's broken. What is the point of that?
I think it's to relieve tension in that scene. I do agree it's not the best placed, but I see the intent. I just don't think the execution worked that well. We'll get into Clint Eastwood fucking up comedy on a larger level in a bit.
No, like, I agree, because, like, I was referencing earlier the scene with the truck. Like, that scene felt oddly comedic to me. Like, the way it was shot, it looked like, oh, here's everyone bumbling around in the trailer, including Clint Eastwood, which was somewhat funny, but then, like, you continue back to the main plot, and, like, man, this is, like, so dire, but, like, the contrast is just unsettling to me between, like, what's happening with Kevin Costner and the kid, and then, oh, everyone's bumbling around in this trailer. Like, oh, no.
Yeah, that moment, that shot especially feels like one of those moments that Clint clearly did one take of, and he's like, we're done. And I'm sure Laura Dern and Bradley were like, couldn't we do, like, one more? They felt kind of weird. No!
There's a scene with the family, the family near the farm, where the wife is taking this blue coffee pot, and she's pouring coffee into Kevin Costner's cup. There's no coffee.
That's very true.
Yeah.
Does anybody recognize who that is? That was the second Oracle from the Matrix movies.
That explains why she is pouring out empty coffee, because she's pouring out the data code from the Matrix.
There is no coffee.
She gives him a spoon, like, stir your coffee with this, and bends it with this amount. But you know what? Yeah, let's get into our final thoughts then on A Perfect World. Sam, is A Perfect World a perfect movie or not?
There's a description in this movie where the characters are talking about how they both like RC Cola. And that's how I feel about this movie. It's like taking a sip of RC Cola. Like, it's okay. It won't kill me. It's there. I will say for a package of RC Cola, it's very well put together. I wish I can be on the same note as everyone else, because like I think Kevin Costner does a great job, but he doesn't. Like, his performance still doesn't explain the certain shots. Oh, there's his hand, and then there's the Casper mask, and then the money on the grass field. Like, oh, wow, how subtle is that? I wish I could just rely on Kevin Costner's performance to help me, like, really love the movie, but, like, I honestly, everything else about it, like, the scenes we mentioned, specifically the awkwardness, I might forget, aside from maybe, like, of course, Kevin Costner's performance, because I can't even think of another performance where he's this good. Yeah, that's it. That's it for me.
You know, this movie, like I said, I always remembered. It always stuck in there from growing up. And rewatching this movie now, you know, I liked it a lot when I was a kid. I wanted to watch it again. But I still like it for all the reasons I liked it when I was a kid. Like, I still love Kevin Costner in this movie. I still really like the relationship between him and the kid. Even as a man in his mid-30s, you could still sympathize with the kid more than you can anybody in the movie. Eastwood's fine here. He doesn't do much as an actor, but as a director, you know, he pulls off some pretty good stuff. But like we referenced, Clint Eastwood making a long, drawn-out, depressing movie, that doesn't happen. But I still think there's enough in here to make it enjoyable. And you put on it's this really slow, almost character piece. And I still think it's a pretty good movie.
But not quite a perfect world of a movie.
I wouldn't call it a perfect world of a movie. I'd call it above average world movie.
I call it an RC world.
My favorite world of all.
I do.
I obviously came out a bit more positive than either of these two gentlemen upon this watch with this, because I hadn't seen it before. I'd heard of it vaguely. What I really did like about it is, like I mentioned, it really fits in with sort of an interesting retrospective look for Eastwood about what that character that he's the most iconic for really does sort of trail and represent at this point in his career. That really works, but also I was still very much invested. I don't think it's just Kevin Costner, to be fair. I think I will give some credit to John Lee Hancock for writing a character who I think is very much on that sort of tightrope of just like, we can be endeared to some respect, but also be very terrified of, like, this. He's manipulating this kid and the roads he could go down, potentially. That carries so much in the face of a lot of issues I do have with some of the subplots and some of the other characters. That climactic sort of scene where he is confronting the family, I think this would really sold and the movie for me, because it perfectly illustrates why, Costner is the way he is, why he might have noble motivations, but also has these horrible methods that completely mess with this family in a horrible way, and also messes with the kid that leads him to shoot. I think that scene really sticks the landing on the movie overall, for how it's walking this gray morality, and how that relationship works for the kid. Some of that stuff later, like I said, in the stuff with the sort of showdown and all that, might not work. Scenes like that one with the family, I think, give it a lot of mileage, and I think make it one of my favorite of the movies Eastwood's directed. Despite the pitfalls, it holds up far better than I would have honestly kind of feared it would.
Is this a perfect world of a movie?
I think it's a pretty damn good world of a movie.
Gotcha.
Don't drink RC Cola.
The ultimate lesson. And speaking of lessons, let's go into a movie full of life lessons. Every Which Way But Loose.
Hey, babe, what do you think of Clint Eastwood?
Oh, I think of him a lot.
Well, what do you think of Clint Eastwood confiding his deepest, darkest secrets to an orangutan?
Comes to sharing my feelings with a woman, my stomach just turns to royal gelatin.
It's Eastwood like you've never seen him before, in a new film called
Every Which Way But Loose.
Every Which Way You Look, there's action, adventure, and fun. Clint Eastwood will turn you
Every which way but loose.
Every Which Way But Loose, which, by the way, I pronounced in our intro incorrectly, because I said Any Which Way But Loose, versus
and that's
that
a
is
sequel?
Well, Any Which Way You Can is the sequel, though. Doesn't it make more sense if those first words are switched up?
Yeah, I agree.
Right, Any Which Way But Loose, that makes more grammatical sense than Every Which Way, and vice versa with the other title.
You wouldn't have that epic song that plays 9,000 times in this movie.
You mean the #1 hit for 3 weeks in a row in 1979?
Every which way blows. Hey, look at that caboose.
Oh, God. So, for those of you who don't know, this is the Clint Eastwood with a monkey movie, which came out in 1978. I found out not only was this, to this day, the biggest hit of a movie starring Clint Eastwood, but if you adjust for inflation, it's also one of the 250 highest grossing films of all time.
That's insane.
Not insane, that's psychotic. That movie should not even be in that list anywhere.
Well, yeah, keep in mind, if you adjust for inflation, it made $330 million, and interestingly, the only movie involving Clint Eastwood that's above that is American Sniper. It was written for Burt Reynolds. And that makes sense, because this came out about a year after Smokey and the Bandit, and it feels like it. This feels like a movie that only could have come out in the wake of Smokey and the Bandit, because it has so many of the same structural problems and major issues. But the difference is, instead of having Burt Reynolds and Sally Field to, carry your movie, you got Clint Eastwood, who can't carry this comedy.
His orangutan carries the movie.
But he gets forgotten about!
Exactly!
100%. Everybody knows about this movie. I don't know that I've ever watched it, and the whole time I'm watching going, it should be Jeffrey Lewis.
Yes, I 100% agree. Jeffrey Lewis, who's a great character actor who plays his brother in the movie, has so much more chemistry with that monkey and is so much more charming and fun. He should have starred in this fucking movie with his gal pal he gets along the way at the fruit stand or whatever. Like a sort of a buddy comedy with them going on, maybe them being chased by the weird Nazi group. That would have been a fun, hopefully 89-minute long movie. Versus this movie that's almost 2 hours and is bloated and terrible and has so much sick stuff in it. Sam, you haven't gotten much of a chance to talk, because I know you, along with being a big Star Wars fan and a big dinosaur movies fan, you're a huge fan of cinematic simians. How did this sort of rank in that sort of pantheon of films for you?
Oh, man.
Where's Clyde for you?
Oh, yeah, where does Clyde rank in the primatometer? I feel so bad for Clyde, because Clyde gets his screen time cut in favor of Clint Eastwood saying some sick shit. Why do I live in a universe where Clint Eastwood has to have way more screen time, almost criminal amounts of screen time, over this orangutan who is actually, very talented?
we should give credit to the monkey actor Manus the orangutan, who Clint Eastwood described as, quote, one of the most natural actors I've ever worked with, but you had to get him on the first take because his boredom levels were very limited.
So that's what Clint became as a director.
Yeah.
He shadowed an orangutan for his career.
Yeah, just imagine all his recent movies, but like he envisions all the actors as orangutans.
He's shooting Bradley Cooper in fucking American Sniper, just like, you gotta be like Manus. And Bradley Cooper's like, who the fuck's Manus? What are you talking about?
You nail this one take, you get a banana.
Do the trick I taught you with the finger gun.
My whole thing, too, real quick, about the orangutan, there's no point to him having this orangutan. It serves no plot point whatsoever.
No,
he won him in a fight. Adam, there's so much plot relevance to that.
Woo! Who gives a shit? It could have easily been, I won this truck in a fight. That's why I love it so much.
Like, I love the fact that he got this orangutan in a different movie, because it sounded like he got it in, like, a spinoff off of Mad Max or something.
That sounds like a way better movie. Is a dude who's like who's underground fighting. He's like, well, you won. Here's your prize. He's like, what the fuck, an orangutan? What am I gonna do with an orangutan?
What am I gonna do with this?
That sounds like a way better movie.
Oh, when I was talking about that, I was just like, why am I not seeing this movie?
Right, I want to see who he fought to win the orangutan. Like, who is the original owner of the orangutan?
Guys, this tells that we need the prequel, All the Loose Ways, about Clint Eastwood getting the orangutan.
Yeah, the orangutan, and that's the thing this movie is obviously known for. It's the Clint Eastwood orangutan movie, like we said. I always thought of it that he was a truck driver, and the orangutan was like his partner in the truck.
You're pitching basically Over the Top, but with Clint Eastwood and orangutan, which is the best movie ever.
What I thought it was. I mean, I'm not even kidding. Instead of that I'm watching, I'm waiting for like some crazy orangutan hijinks. You don't really get any. Like, I wanted to see the orangutan dressed as like a female, and Clint Eastwood like, this is my wife, you know, to sneak into a place where you got to have a partner with you, or this is my son, so they get to an amusement park or something goofy, you know, something silly. None of that.
It's a shame when Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back is a better monkey movie than you are.
They got the better orangutan.
We talk about Clyde being wasted here, and it's like, why is Clyde wasted, guys? Well, because, you know how when, you know, Smokey and the Bandit, there isn't much of any plot, and it's just sort of like aimlessly wandering around? This movie has a similar aesthetic to it, except they have 10 different subplots at the same time. Because you've got, like, Clint going after Sandra Locke as this country singer who he's obsessed with and follows around and slut shames, which will call
his wife.
Yes, she was his wife at the time, and I looked up, I get most of my trivia for our show notes from IMDb. There is a fucked up piece of trivia about the stupid Clint Eastwood monkey movie, about a parent...
Like pregnant or something, and he made her get, like...
An abortion, yeah.
Oh,
yep.
Good God.
It's really fucked up. I don't want to go too far into it, but it's really messed up. And then you've also got, like, Clint and Jeffrey Lewis's mother, who's, like, getting people... Which, I will say this, Ruth Gordon... like, is one of the few oases of quality in this movie. It's not a good character, but I think
it's Granny from the Beverly Hillbillies, for the most part.
Right, but she's committed to it, and it shows how great Ruth Gordon was as an actress, making the most out of just such shitty material, especially the scene where, like, she has the gang of Nazi punks who are chasing after Clint Eastwood and Jeffrey Lewis come up to her doorstep and fuck with their property, and then she starts shooting her shotgun and making their motorcycles explode, and it turns into a weird, like, handheld scene that I'm just like, did this just turn into a Bourne movie? Where it's
and when
fucking
she's shooting
cam
it,
and
you
shit.
can see the shotgun because of the kick clearly just jumping out of her hands.
Yep.
Like 100%. It looks like on her face where she's like, oh shit.
Ripping Tarot lady. She got kind of screwed over in the middle of the movie where everything else was happening, but like they focused on the billion upon billions of subplots instead of her, and I felt bad for her because just like she did carry her the scenes she was in to a point where it's just like I would rather just follow her the entire time.
It shows that she is an Oscar-worthy actress. Also, trivia, a nominated screenwriter.
Really?
Yes, for the movie Adam's Rib, which is a movie about a Spencer Tracy comedy with Katharine Hepburn. It's like a battle of the sexes in a courtroom in 1949. Trailblazer, Ruth Gordon. Anyway, But I agree with what you're talking about, Sam, especially, like, in the middle of, like, our big climax where the, like, Nazi punks are, like, fighting Clint Eastwood and Jeffrey Lewis, they suddenly give a shit about her again, where it's like, oh, here's her taking her license photo. Like, remember this subplot from, like, 20 minutes ago?
Oh, longer.
That's true, 40 minutes ago.
Yeah, it was when they first left. She's like, who's going to take me to get my license? That was like, yeah, it was a good 40 minutes prior.
Between the time I was watching the movie, which was 40 minutes, and then my out of body experience, which was like 50, I'd say it was like an hour for me.
Right, exactly. That's what it feels like. And then also we need to talk more obviously about the Nazi punks who show up for like it's just Widows. Like the Black Widows. Yeah, our gang that follows after these guys. That's such a lazy way of getting any kind of conflict into the story.
It was so stupid. That was bad. I'd argue that the two cops were even worse.
Yeah, I agree, because they have this whole thing where two cops are chasing them. Another subplot we forgot to mention. There's literally a point where the black cop finds like a rattlesnake in the middle of the forest when they're trying to chase after Clint Eastwood, and he's like, "Feet don't fail me now." I'm like, oh.
Fuck.
Well, because the whole thing was they were there just as a plot device, Clint Eastwood and the girl. So he goes in the bar and he's looking for a fight and he beats up these two guys, which he started the fight purposely. Beats up the guys and, you're not going to call the cops. Those are the cops. Holy shit. And he's got
Holy fuck.
And you're like, okay. God.
I'm so beefy and strong, I beat up these cops.
Right. Yeah. I love the crushing the peanuts scene where it shows Clint Eastwood's bicep and the one guy's like, oh boy.
And that is one of the worst edits ever, where the guy gets thrown out the jukebox, and they still have that shot, and all of a sudden he's in a different position. It's like, you couldn't cut to Clint? You couldn't?
You only get one take because the orangutan.
Well, to be fair, this was not directed by Clint. This was a movie that he was hired for as a star. He had directed a few movies before this.
Oh, that's right.
Right, but this is a director he'd worked with before, James Fargo, and I mean, all the credit to Clint, where as much as he's a one-take wonder, he at least has more good one-takes than bad. Whereas this case, every take is terrible.
Every take is fucking bad.
And the thing, I mean, Clint Eastwood he doesn't give a shit about this movie. Like, he's sleepwalking through this movie. Even the fight scenes are so badly done. Like, how obvious is that he's pulling his punches, and there's 6 inches of air between his fists and a face when he's supposedly hitting them.
I think it's still bad, but for a sort of 180 reason, where I just think Clint looks lost this whole movie. I don't think he's not trying. It's just more, he's just like, I don't know what I'm trying here. I've never done a comedy before. Because, Clint's been funny in movies, but it's more of, to relieve a dramatic situation, and it works for the character. Even A Few Dollars More has one of my favorites, where he has the dynamite, and he just, waves at that guy and then disappears down before it explodes. Great comedic moment, but it works because Clint knows who the character is, versus he just looks completely like, I'm in the fucking middle of the ocean with a raft, and it's fucking deflating. I don't know what's happening, James. James, help me. I don't know what I'm doing. And, especially in scenes where he confronts Sandra Locke in, the lowest point of this terrible movie, where this whole time, Clint's chasing after her, and she was upfront with him about, hey, look, I like to sleep around, I like going around, finding guys to guys, because I'm on the road a lot, my boyfriend understands, all this other stuff. You could potentially have issues with how she kind of does that, Clint, but at the same time respect her as a person. You just forgot that part about respecting her as a person, and then you talk down to her about, well, I'm the only guy who gave a shit about you outside the bed. No, you didn't. Right, shut the fuck up.
100%. She told you exactly what the fucking gist was, and you're like, nope, she loves me. I'm going to keep going after her.
Yes!
Well, this is all your fault.
No, wait, hashtag not all men. What is it, buddy?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's what this movie felt like to me. It's just whenever you hear your dad talk about, man, things are so much simpler back then. Show this movie. You know what? Show this movie to classes just to show the period in which this is what masculinity is. It's about taking your shirt off with your schlubby body and just punching the other guy for no discernible reason while you're wearing your shitty fucking blue jean pants that make you look really fucking ugly. It's
and if you bet a woman, even if she tells you she's not really looking for a relationship, she's lying to you. Because you betted her that well.
And you know what? If she has a problem with the Southwestern mentality, just put some dentures in her chowder.
Yeah,
because she's
absolutely.
not gonna have sex with you, so therefore you feel more gratified. There you go.
Well, and then even on just a filmmaking level, James Fargo makes this weird decision where, like, Clint confronts her, just like, well, I'm the only guy that ever cared about you outside the bedroom, and she completely understandably starts saying, like, how fucking dare you, and gets, like, hysterical and angry for all the right reasons, and for some reason he wants to shoot it like we're from Clint's perspective of her, like, trying to punch him and kick him around, and then also shots of Clint getting, like, battered. On a clear filmmaking level, is trying to put her in this menacing stance for being 100% understandable. And it's such a, like, low, scummy move.
Maybe what I got from it was that, you know, he got through to her, and she does actually love him, even though she's saying, I hate you. Like I haven't seen it, but I did a little bit of research. I know the characters in the sequel. So I think it was more or less, no, he was right. He got through to her, and she's self-destructing because now her world has come crumbling down.
I mean, either way, it's terrible. Either way, it's horrible.
Yeah, it's fucking stupid.
This is our, clearly, like, our critical interpretations of art. Sam, what was your interpretation of this brilliant scene from Every Which Way But Loose?
What about the monkey?
Oh, I don't know.
We broke Sam with this movie, everybody.
This movie, like, it's like, there was, like, okay, you want to know the scene that really broke me? Was the scene, like, where it was Clint Eastwood and Clyde in the strip club. And there's a moment, no dialogue, just Clint Eastwood and Clyde just going throughout town, just having a good time. Then the conclusion to this is Clint Eastwood waking up his best friend and his girlfriend and saying, "Hey, we have to get laid."
Yeah, no, you're 100%. And by the way, it's his brother, not even his best friend. Which, believe me, for the first 40 minutes of the movie, I thought it was his best friend.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, I keep forgetting that.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I like how they take that detour all of a sudden. Like, oh, hey, remember, he's got an orangutan, and it's horny. He's got to get it laid. Like, what the fuck is the point of any of that?
I mean, in a movie where you would actually have Manus as your second build person, but
right.
The problem is that it's surrounded by all these weird subplots that feel so gangly. And trivia, this was rejected by every studio when it was initially pitched to people. Shocking. I don't know why.
Wow.
Like, what is so damning about this? I know. I'm at a loss for words.
I know.
What's so just puzzling is just how many of these different turns. It feels very much like a movie that was improvised on the spot, which works. It gives me far more respect for something like Smokey and the Bandit, where that was the case, where there barely was a script, and Burt Reynolds and Sally Field were like, fuck it, let's make this better. It shows that, like, they would have, you know, in these roles, maybe not advanced some of the weird backwards politics of it, but at least made it more entertaining. Like, Sam, would you agree that Burt Reynolds would be a much better lead than Eastwood here?
Well, like, shit, like, anything would have been better. I would have had Dom DeLuise dressed as an orangutan. That would have been better. We were talking about the whole, like, Clint Eastwood sees everyone as an orangutan, right? But imagine that with Burt Reynolds seeing his friend in an orangutan suit and just like, no, he's an orangutan. It's like, no, I'm clearly your friend. Like, no, you're an orangutan.
No, it would have totally made more sense for Burt Reynolds in this movie. And honestly, Sally Field, because Burt Reynolds and Sally Field had more chemistry than these people who are actually married.
Yeah, that's the charm in Smokey and the Bandit, is you can kind of see these two people falling in love with each other in context of the movie, versus in this movie, this feels like two people who are in a very bitter relationship, which, given what I said before, seems very true. But yeah, this feels so just incongruous and really incapable of coming together on any level, especially, what was that fucking ending where it's just like, well, Sandra Locke beat me up, and here are our enemies on the sides, like, licking their wounds, but at least we got each other.
Right, we're going home. Every which way but loose. You turn me every which... You're like, what the... Wait a minute. There was no resolution. Period.
No, you gotta save it for any which way you can, Adam.
I will not watch it.
And then you get to the reboot, which is just called Loose.
That's true.
Yeah.
It's like Logan. Loose.
Loose.
Starring Scott Eastwood. Oh, God.
Well, let's get into our final thoughts while you have the floor, Adam. Yeah.
Right.
Final thoughts.
First of all, Clint Eastwood is a very unlikable character in the movie. Not even the shit that he does in the movie, but reading what was happening behind the scenes even jaded me a little bit more on the film. And I know it shouldn't, but it did. Because it's that bad. The monkey is barely in it. And when he is, it's for no reason. Like, there's no through a line with the monkey. It's a throwaway character. Like I said before, it could have been something just as easy as the pickup truck he drives the whole movie that he wanted to bet. Like a Millennium Falcon sort of deal. Would have been way better with Jeffrey Lewis as the star. Because Jeffrey Lewis, to me, other than Ma, is the most endearing character in the movie. And we didn't say her by name, but even Beverly D'Angelo, as his girlfriend, is actually pretty good in it. She doesn't get a lot to do, but she's decent in it. But other than that, man, I mean, this is just a bad movie. This is definitely, A, a movie of its time, but B, there are so many fans still of this movie. If you liked this movie when you were a kid, I ask you to watch it again and definitely reassess, because it is not a good movie. There's nothing in it that works.
By the way, I didn't even... I completely forgot that it was Beverly D'Angelo, which, that's weird when I'm watching a movie with Beverly D'Angelo and you're making me forget about her because of how much of a mishmash garbage movie this is. Because she's great, usually, but...
Well, I mean, dude, you gotta figure her first major interaction with anybody of the main cast is a tit joke.
Yeah.
You like these cantaloupes? Oh, they're the best I ever seen. You're like, oh, for God's sakes.
You'd get vacation later, Beverly. They'd give you much more to do. Anyway, Sam, your final thoughts on Every Which Way But Loose.
I want to get loose from the noose. That's what I feel.
Damn.
This fucking movie. I hate it. I hate it a lot, actually. Like, honestly, like, think about this movie. So, like, there's a fight scene in the middle of this movie, and you can check on Twitter because I did some, where basically I cut the fight scene together with dialogue from the beloved PS2 game Devil May Cry 3, and I tried to see if I can get any enjoyment out of that, and I barely got something out of it. I needed to do something because I could not just watch this fucking close to like 2.5 hour movie about Clint Eastwood refusing to have his orangutan have more screen time than him, and on top of that, saying the most like misogynistic, just vile stuff. Like, doesn't help that you mostly see a bunch of like shirtless, like middle-aged guys who say, "Hey, man, I can beat you up." Like that. We didn't talk about this. That last fight with that other guy, like that was so sad. That was just so sad and embarrassing to watch for both of them.
Especially when it starts off with that really, really bad Good, the Bad, and the Ugly joke, where they play like the bit of the Ennio Morricone parody.
They did that a lot in this movie, dude.
They did. They had nothing. They had nothing. They fucking had nothing despite having everything. Because that's what it felt like. I felt like... What's the best way to put this?
It's a bad movie. That's probably the best
It's a bad movie, but it's also a movie where I was watching it, and it felt like I was having a fever dream. And then I remembered I'm still here sitting there watching this movie where Clint Eastwood is stalking this one country singer while these Nazi bike gang try to find them. And then you have the black cop who's being stereotypically, like, foolish. You're just going to have a really bad time. I fucking hate it. I'm done.
Thank you for coming on. You had such a great time, I'm sure, with your double feature scene. But anyway, I can't really add much beyond what you two said, except you're making a movie where a guy teams up with a monkey, and for some reason you're like, you know what, that's not enough. You couldn't even be on the level of Dunstan checks in. This is Dunstan checks out, as far as I'm concerned.
Oh, no.
That's the sad thing. I've seen so many movies of like people teaming up with monkeys, and I always thought it was cheap. I always thought it was lower than like, oh god, this is so dumb. Why are you teaming up with a monkey? This movie gives me infinitely more respect for any of those movies. Like, I'm sorry, Ed, the fucking Matt LeBlanc with a chimp who plays baseball movie. You at least committed to your premise, as opposed to this movie that doesn't at all. Despite the best efforts of people like Jeffrey Lewis or Ruth Gordon, it's just, no one can save this. And the fact that it's, with adjusting for inflation, one of the highest grossing movies of all time is sad. It's quite frankly incredibly sad.
Every which way but loose, baby. You're every which way but loose.
And inside the fire's burning.
On that whimper, that is the end of our Clint Eastwood double feature for the evening, and we have some feedback to read, and man, you guys had a lot of feedback related to Clint Eastwood, and
This
I'm
got
going
to be one of our biggest feedbacks, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that. I think it's one of the bigger feedbacks. And first up, we had Will Torres say, "The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly is the best film he's in. Unforgiven is the best film he has made. And Gran Torino is hilarious, but not as hilarious as that fake baby in American Sniper." You saw that fake baby, right? It was played by Bradley Cooper. Brian Kane says, for his favorite, "Letters from Iwo Jima is probably my favorite war film of all time. It's truly incredible to see such a reverence toward the Japanese soldiers trapped in a losing battle. I wish more movies would explore the humanity of the conscripts of the Axis powers." Jonathan Hampton McHale, friend of the show, says, "Gran Torino is the best of his more recent movies, perhaps his last good movie." And Kara Holden actually responded to that, saying, "Although not as good, I do enjoy Trouble with the Curve." Scott Johnson says, "High Plains Drifter has one of the best endings in a movie I've ever seen, although the film has some troubling moments that would not be easy to watch today." Bill Gabriel says, "The least favorite is a toss-up between Every Which Way But Loose and its sequel, and Bronco Billy. Favorite has to be Dirty Harry." Friend of the show, Dan Chambos, says, "I love Dirty Harry. My dad showed me it when I was a kid. He always gets his man." Nate Thomas says, "Favorites, Outlaw Josie Wales, Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, Unforgiven, Every Which Way But Loose, In the Line of Fire, High Plains Drifter." And then for his worst, he says, "Bloodwork, Pink Cadillac, The Rookie, and Hereafter." Matt Kozlowski says, "Million Dollar Baby may be his best, hands down. I know I will get shit for this, but Unforgiven is my least favorite." Stephen D. at Waiting FTH says, "Where Eagles Dare, The Outlaw Josie Wales, and Dirty Harry would be my top three. The Deadpool and The Rookie are way, way, way below that." So yeah, that's a lot of diverse range of opinions, to say the least.
Two, right off the bat, really jump at me. Nate, dude, no. You can't have that your favorites, man. You can't, because it's not good. He's the type of person that I was talking about earlier. Like, maybe rewatch it. If you can get through it and still enjoy it, then, I mean, good on you. And then the very next one, Unforgiven, yeah, you're going to get shit for that. Not only is Unforgiven one of the best Westerns, it's also one of the best movies to come out in the last 30 years.
That movie does such a great job of deconstructing just what he thinks of, like, the Western mythology in general, after being the guy who sort of crystallized it in sort of a postmodern perspective in, like, the 60s. Admittingly, I hadn't seen the first two in the Dollars trilogy, A Fistful of Dollars and For a Few Dollars More, until we were prepping for this episode. I still think I love Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, but especially For a Few Dollars More is far more underrated. That one is so well put together. Him and Lee Van Cleef playing off each other.
Oh, yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
It's a damn good trilogy. Like, regardless of if you love one or the other the most, like, you're in for a great time with all three, I'd argue.
Mm-hmm. And Lee Van Cleef is one of the greatest Western actors of all time.
The best cowboy from New Jersey. But Sam, what are some of your favorites that we haven't maybe mentioned?
I tell you right now, this car person should probably not even mention Trouble with the Curve, because that's one of the worst ones I've seen in recent memory. At the end, did you know Clint Eastwood just fucking takes Amy Adams' phone and just chucks it in a dumpster bin? Oh, no, sorry. So she chucks her phone into the dumpster because Clint Eastwood's like, technology bad, technology no good, fire good. But no, like, The Good, Bad, and Ugly is not just great because of Clint Eastwood, but it's also great because of Sergio Leone's direction, and the combination with this Italian, and of course it spawned the spaghetti western genre. That genre sticks to me more than just general westerns, because the problem with general westerns is that you have your standard ones that have these racial undertones that, like, I've never been a big fan of, especially like the John Wayne ones that I've aside from True Grit, there's not one I can think of that I actually enjoyed. The Good and Bad and the Ugly, it was such a weird mishmash of, like, this Italian director coming in with his own vision, and then Clint Eastwood coming in to, like, form this I'd argue groundbreaking character, and it all meshed together in a way that I really adore. That's not like when you travel down, like, Southwest, like, man, like, this doesn't even resemble that, and, like, no, of course not, because it's like I'd argue it's a more romanticized, like, fantastical rendition.
What works about those movies is that obviously not only was there sort of the inspiration of, like, that was a decline in the Western genre in America, but also you had at the same time the sudden, like, jolt of attention in international cinema with Akira Kurosawa, which clearly, A Fistful of Dollars especially, is just like, hey man, you like Yojimbo, I get it, this is your Jimbo fan fiction, Man with No Name, OC, Don't Steal, because that's, I mean, that's what it is, basically, but in a really fun, entertaining way still.
But that works for both parties, in all honesty, because that's what you want to do, because you want to be inspired and be like, man, I want to make my own version, and you wind up doing something that feels new.
It's the confluence of all those styles mishmashing together in a beautiful way, where it feels, like you mentioned, it's more of like a fantasy quest movie, any of those ones necessarily a Western.
And I think they did for what they did with slasher movies, the Giallo movies, that little bit of weird otherworldly tinge on it. Like, it's not pure fantasy, but it's just through a different set of eyes who have not necessarily experienced that, but they love the genre. So this is their take on it. And I agree with Sam. I think the spaghetti western is one of the most underrated genres, or subgenres.
Shoutouts to Ennio Morricone, who
the score. Oh my god.
Ecstasy of Gold is one of my favorite tracks of all time. Maybe even be my favorite one.
Especially how he integrates the score in for a few dollars more with the watch thing that comes up. That's so ingenious. It's so suddenly sends a jolt through your spine.
Think about it. You get pumped up watching a western.
Yeah, it jacks your shit up.
And I mean, you can also see, speaking of, someone mentioned, Scott, friend of the show, mentioned High Plains Drifter, because that was one of the first movies Clint Eastwood directed, was that one. And you can tell he was influenced by that, and also, Don Siegel and John Ford. But at the same time, that movie, I agree, a very mixed bag for me, where you have, such interesting, Western moments and a great ending. And also Jeffrey Lewis, by the way, is in that, too. Speaking of misogynistic stuff, the rape in that movie.
Yeah, it's pretty intense.
Especially given, what the twist is, it feels weird where it's I guess we're siding with them, but also rapist revenge thing. It's weird.
Right.
It's so complicated. That movie's very, uneven for me. And, literally huge highs, super low lows.
Nate's one, The Outlaw Josie Wales. I love The Outlaw Josie Wales. I think that is such a fantastic movie. Have you guys seen that one?
Actually, no. I have not seen that one.
I saw Josie and the Pussycats.
Then yeah, you've basically seen it then.
Oh, good.
Someone mentioned here Dirty Harry, and I've only seen the first Dirty Harry. I dig the first Dirty Harry, but weirdly, I haven't seen the sequels more because that movie works so well as, it's a movie about a guy who's experienced being a cop in this shitty place and fucking hates it, and then he literally throws down his badge at the end of the movie. I don't know where you really go from there.
You, like you and I talked about a couple days ago, they literally went basically the Charles Bronson route, or even a Rambo route, where they just made the stakes so much higher and crazier, where they gotta get Harry Callahan back. He's the only one who can curb this violence. They just got too extreme. The first one's great, but yeah, they just got so silly, the sequels. Enough.
Especially shout out to what's his face, Frank from Hellraiser as the villain in Dirty Harry. Andrew Robinson, terrifying.
Yeah, he was fantastic.
Great in that movie.
He's basically the Zodiac Killer. I forgot what his name was in that movie, but
yep,
that's what they build him after. Yeah,
basically. Also, Letters from Iwo Jima. I do love that movie. I think that one gets swept under the rug too much. It's a great movie.
But I do think with the companion piece of Flags of Our Fathers, I think they work really well together.
See, that's my problem is Flags of Our Fathers I think is so much more of a traditional war movie. It's fine. I don't think it's a bad war movie. But I'm just watching it man, I wish it was watching Saving Private Ryan or something like that. Versus Iwo Jima is so much more of a unique perspective I've never seen, especially in a movie made by an American director about those guys in Japan who were on that other side. You never really thought about that, and that's so ingenious. It does elevate that, Flags of Our Fathers, I agree.
That's what I meant, yeah.
That's an unfortunate thing, because, watching his recent stuff, personally for me, I don't think he ever took the lessons he gained from, Sergio Leone in terms of, his film style, and just, melding it together with a different sort of, something this could be bad in his hands, certainly, especially melding it with different cultures. But I think in certain cases it can actually work and be beneficial and actually make his film style be more interesting, as opposed to just having the same sort of kind of blandish, grayish look. So a good portion of them.
Yeah, especially around $1 Million Baby. That's where that really started.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, after $1 Million Baby, that kind of became his formula.
Which worked for $1 Million Baby, and then it's just he just kept doing that, and it never quite elevated. And to the point where it's stuff like, I remember Sully has one of my favorite bad movie moments in an Oscar movie, where Aaron Eckhart, God bless him, he's like, oh, I'm in a Clint Eastwood movie, I'm gonna rise back up, and they're showing the simulation of the crash, and they're just like, oh, well, the simulation shows this, and Aaron Eckhart's like, this was no video game! I'm like, oh, Aaron. But also we had a bit of feedback from our last episode, our holiday episode, from Miss Mallory Somerville, which this is a few tweets that she had tweeted, at Rosemary's Bay, which, by the way, I dig that Twitter handle. She said, you need to get Adam to actually use Twitter. I want to roast him for his bad Emmett Otter takes. My cousin said, Emmett Otter's Jug Band Christmas was dull, so if anyone wants to form a little family with me before the holidays, I'm suddenly free. He's got a hole in his wash tub. Also, do you remember A Muppet Family Christmas?
Alright, well, first of all, Mallory, I'm your way older cousin. Show me some goddamn respect.
Time for an Emmett Otter beatdown.
Second of all, shut up. I'll tell you what, right into the show again, and you pick my Twitter name, and I'll use it. And I promise you I will be active on it for 30 days. So I'm calling you out. Yeah, I got a hole in my wash tub, because I use it for things. Bernadette, of course I remember Muppet Family Christmas. Who doesn't remember Muppet Family Christmas? You know what? You're a Muppet.
Yeah, take it.
I actually hadn't seen that special until it was not too long after I saw Emmett Otter in college. I'm like, oh, what's another like Muppet Christmas thing? And that's a weird special where I don't think they could ever technically release that again on video because of the weird rights stuff now. Because that's a special, for those of you who don't know, where the Muppets go to like have a family Christmas at, it's like Fozzie Bear's mom's house. When she's trying to leave and go to fucking Florida, which I love. It's like, oh, we're gonna have Christmas with Ma. I'm going to Florida. Fuck, they're here. And then not only do all the Muppets show up, but then the Sesame Street gang shows up, and then Kermit at one point goes down, like, through a well or whatever, and ends up in Fraggle Rock. Marvel's most ambitious crossover couldn't compete with Muppet Family Christmas. But, Sam, I know you're an Emmett Otter fan as well.
I absolutely adore it, and you can see the inspiration behind that for The Dark Crystal. Yeah, you definitely see the inspiration to that, how it builds off toward that. And it's just like, you care so much about like Ma and the entire band, and like, yeah, we're about not their band, like even them, like they have so much character and charm to them. Like it's just, everyone should just watch that movie at least once a year. Because like it's worth it. Here's the thing: out of all these goddamn Hallmark Christmas movies that come out, it's just like watch that one instead. Just make time for that one, because it's just such a nice movie to watch.
So I hope that was
you fucking co-host then.
oh fuck.
No, you got pressure, Sam.
Oh no.
Next episode was Sam. Any which way you can. Anyway.
Any which way you can get this movie off my brain.
We desperately need to head out of this episode, but before we do, we want to announce something on the Facebook page and the Twitter page at DEDBpod, which, by the way, is where you can find our little questionnaires about, hey, what's your favorite or least favorite for any individual topic. We post those on Monday, but from the Sunday when you're listening to this episode, if it's the first week, if you're listening later, ignore this. We put out a poll because Adam and I have been discussing about potentially doing a format change for the show. Where obviously, as you heard the intro of this episode, we did our picking of our movies. We've considered not having that picking for the individual episode be at the beginning, and instead doing the picking for the next episode at the end. So, for example, in the case of we just did our holiday special and then the Clint Eastwood thing, rather than doing the Clint Eastwood picking at the beginning of the Clint Eastwood episode, we would potentially have done a picking for the Clint Eastwood movies at the end of the holiday special episode, and then lead into our Clint Eastwood episode the next week. We've discussed doing this, and we wanted to put it to a vote to all of our loyal listeners out there. The poll will be up for a week, so it's already been 2 days in if you're listening to this on the day we're releasing this, and we recommend you all go out there and go ahead and vote, because we would like to hear your voice in this big change, potentially, for the show.
It could be something cool to maybe leave the people hanging, or if you like the current format, that's great too. It lets us know it's been working.
And that's on both Twitter and Facebook if you don't use one or the other for your own personal religious reasons. We get it. In any case, go ahead and vote there. Also, you can, of course, submit feedback to us via the Twitter and Facebook page, and also at DoubleEdgeDoubleBill, our Gmail account. But to head out of the episode, we want to thank Chris Oliver for the use of his music for the intro and outro of our show. Listen to more of his music at chrisoliver.bandcamp.com. Also, thanks to Emily Scarta for the art for our show. She accepts commissions at fiverr.com/EE-Scarta. And of course, we want to thank Mr. Sam Brutuxan, our most loyal guest host. Sam, anybody can find you at Brutuxan on the internet, pretty much, right?
Every which way blows.
He's in a catatonic state. Yeah, on Twitter and I guess Tumblr if you're still using that.
If you're using Tumblr right now, make sure you don't look at any nipples because that shit's banned, apparently. So, like, if you want to not watch the movie and have a slightly better time, watch the clip I made with the.
Yeah, that was very funny.
Every witch trigger but loose.
We'll probably retweet that on the Twitter page because it was pretty fucking awesome.
I think we have to. Yeah.
We have to. Clearly.
I needed to do something after our movie because I was just like I spent all this time watching the shitty Clint Eastwood movie with the underrepresented orangutan. So what can I do?
We're glad we could invite you on for a fun time again. Along with a Twitter account for the show, I'm also on Twitter at NotTheWho'sTommy. The blog where I write stuff is marianithomas.wordpress.com, and I was kind of obliquely referencing earlier, around the time this episode would be released, I would put out my sort of dissertation, as it were, on Unforgiven, A Perfect World, and then also Bridges of Madison County, which I've decided to call my Clint Eastwood's Men with No Aim trilogy. It's clever. That'll be out around the time before the Mule comes out, but after this episode probably comes out, and I'll probably link it also on the Twitter and amongst other things. But also, you can find Adam somewhere drifting into the west.
Yeah, you're not gonna find me, and I like it that way.
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba. I'm loving it.
For sure. And also, make sure to subscribe to us on iTunes. Rate and review us there, and on any platform, like we're on Spotify as well. We're on the YouTubes, amongst other things. The more that you rate or share or spread the word about the show, the more that we get seen. And we love being seen, because, like Clint Eastwood, we are ego-driven maniacs.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. You sons of bitches.
Yep. But it's time to throw our badges to the side, shoot some guy in the heart, and walk off into a lack of a ending with our orangutan guys.
Hey, which way but loose? This movie fucking sucked.
Good night.
Good night.
Inside, my paycheck's burning.